welcome back to Seeking True Love. My guest today is Lisa Manca, who is a dance therapist and attachment specialist. And we are going to be talking about how you can feel secure attachment in a relationship all the way down to your body. If attachment style is something that you've struggled with, and if you don't know what that struggle looks like, that's what we're going to be talking about. But it tends to manifest as attracting, let's say, unstable relationship situations like emotionally unavailable partners or no partners, or kind of like a yo-yo stop and start, like high intense passion and then not, like those people that it's like they break up and they make up and they break up and they make up. If you're in any kind of pattern like that and you want to break out of that pattern, you need to do it at the body level. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Lisa, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm very excited to have you. I think this is going to be a great conversation.
Absolutely.
Welcome to Seeking True Love, dating advice for highly sensitive, heart-led women. If you're a deeply feeling, intuitive woman who longs for a relationship that meets you on every emotional level, you're in the right place. This podcast is for women who lead with their hearts and who refuse to settle for surface-level dating or emotionally unavailable partners. Here, you'll get practical dating guidance made for HSPs, support for the challenges sensitive women face, tools to stay grounded without abandoning your needs, and expert conversation about what true love really is and how to call it in for yourself. Because your love story should be extraordinary.
You're just right for me, and I'm just right for you. And I'll take your heart and squeeze so softly, so sweetly, forever love.
Lisa Manca is a licensed professional clinical counselor and board-certified dance therapist that helps anxious, super smart individuals who feel numb after pain and tragedy reconnect to their bodies so that they can release their pain and feel good again. With her guidance, clients explore how to feel emotions without running away or finding distractions. She uses movement to help clients access thoughts and feelings that otherwise might stay hidden. Lisa uses dynamic attachment repatterning, invented by Diane Poole Heller, to help those who have trouble in dating and relationships find secure attachment. That is what we all need in dating and relationships, is secure attachment. So I just want to start with having you define a little bit about what attachment style is and how it affects your ability to have a healthy love relationship.
So, attachment is essentially how we got our needs met in our first individual, like with our first connection, our first relationship with, which is our primary caregiver, right?
Mm-hmm.
And depending on how our primary caregiver attuned to us, we developed a way of attaching, right? Attachment. And if you think about it as if someone was inconsistent, you would be more likely to develop what Diane calls an ambivalent, but also is referred to sometimes as an anxious attachment style, where you're fixated on the other person. And our brains often take that initial patterning, right, when we were younger, and apply it to every relationship, right? So unconsciously, and sometimes that can be the, oh my God, this person, I feel like I know them my whole life. And it's like, well, yeah, because their pattern of behavior is similar to a parent, right, that you had experienced before. So attachment is essentially our nervous system's way of bonding with people, and your attachment system is really smart. It's going to adapt to whoever was your caregiver at that time. But then those adaptations, while useful when you were younger, may not be useful when you're an adult. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's a great way to explain it. And so can you give some examples of, in particular, people who are very empathic and sensitive to other people, since we're talking about highly sensitive people? How would somebody tune into a caregiver as a child, as a survival pattern? How would that show up in dating and relationships, maybe in a way that's not so healthy?
I think the ambivalent or anxiously attached, which I think more highly sensitive people, I think I could see it going a couple ways, right? We have the anxious ambivalent attachment style. We have the disorganized attachment style, where the caregiver might have been, you're going towards to them for safety, but they might not have been safe. So the client feels like a push-pull with them and feels very, the idea of having a secure base is not there. And then we have the avoidant, where the child has been left alone for so long emotionally, or their caregivers weren't able to attune to them emotionally, that they just end up shutting down. So those are three of what we call insecure attachment styles. So any of those three could be, I could see any of those three working with a highly sensitive person. Like it might at a certain point be like, oh, I can't, nobody comes to help me when I cry for help as a baby. So I'm going to just not depend on anyone. And that's more of an avoidant attachment style, right? I could see the fixation of the anxious or ambivalent attachment style, where it's like, okay, what's happening? Why aren't they calling? Like getting super anxious, and the level of anxiety and worry is such that it is out of proportion for the situation, like not getting a text back. And then the third one is maybe feeling like you want to go towards someone and then running away, want to go towards someone and running away, and that kind of disorganized attachment style. I could see any of those three happening with a highly sensitive person. And then in dating, it might just look like, for the anxious or ambivalent, that inability to self-soothe, like the feeling like you need someone else to help you regulate your nervous system more than average, we'll say. And with the avoidant, it's like the inability to let someone be close. Like it's almost like you can't relax when someone else is around. And then the disorganized, it could just be a combo of both of those feelings. Like, okay, now I want you here, now I don't want you. So that can be a little bit frustrating. And in dating, it might be the person with the anxious or ambivalent attachment style attaches a lot of meaning to one or two dates and feels like their life is going to end if someone doesn't call, like that level. And it makes sense, right? Because it was a survival instinct. If your mom didn't attend to you when you were a baby, or if your primary caregiver did not attend to you when you were a baby, you would not survive. So when people are like, why can't you just relax around dating? It's like, no, this is a survival instinct that is there. And your attachment system was very smart, but it takes a bit more to repattern that than just like, oh, date around, date 5 people at once, then you won't care. Like it's hard to, and that can be the pop culture advice around things like that.
Yeah, I would be curious to hear about what it is about romantic relationships and dating that tends to really bring out this attachment wounds in the way that, let's say, friendships don't. Like, is it the level of intimacy or what? Like, what is that?
I'd say so. I would say it's the level of intimacy. Like, this is someone that you're really close to. And it still might come up in friendships from time to time, but the level of intensity, I think, is, our romantic partners, the people closest to us, are going to definitely stir that up.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's very, it's interesting, but yeah, like with friends, you might have someone who's really great with friends, but like that switch doesn't get flipped until they're in a romantic relationship. And then there's all these behaviors and your friends are like, that's out of character for you, or this only happens in this realm. That makes sense?
Yeah, because it's so deep.
I think so. And it's also, it just feels, I'm going to use the word primal, not in a like caveman sense, but just in a like survival sense, right? It does feel primal.
It does. And I think because also sexuality gets involved. Sexuality is a very primal human experience.
Right.
And you're not, friendship, I think people can maintain friendships at, like, let's say from the heart up.
Right.
And you can't do that once you get engaged in sex and the body. Like I know you do a lot of work with the body. The body doesn't lie. So I bet there's a lot of that gets stirred up as well when you're engaging in physical intimacy.
I just think about it as like hormones, right? How many of us, like, if you think about it, you have your heart and you have your hormones, and like between those two things, a lot of stuff gets stirred up, right? Yep. And the hormones can be like, but I love him. And you're like, no, you just slept with him. That doesn't really help. No, like it's not, look at the love but the flood of oxytocin is telling you that it's a love thing, right?
Right.
So between those two things, right? And that's, I mean, if you think about like friends with benefits, those always end up messy because people are like, I'm going to compartmentalize, or this is going to be a friend, and the sex is going to be over here. Just those usually end up messy, right?
They
Because
do. Yeah.
we're way more integrated than we think. So I could see both those spilling into each other, right?
Yeah, the only time I've seen friends with benefits situation work is in the world of non-monogamy, where you're not each other's primary partners, and then you have primary partners, and so it's more established and agreed upon, but I don't know if I've seen it work out amongst people who are more monogamous leaning that think they're just gonna like casually have sex with their friend while they're both looking for other partners. I think you're right. That's very messy.
Yeah, and even in the poly spaces, there are rules, right? It's not a
Hmm.
free for all. Like people have to come. And I think what's challenging sometimes in the poly spaces, it's not these rules haven't been predetermined. So you have to set them with each new partner. Like I'd like to have kitchen table poly, or I'd like to have parallel poly, or whatever your process is. And you have to decide what that means for each partner. And it's a little less like, I feel like monogamy is like, okay, don't cheat, you only get one person. So because poly, you kind of have to invent your not invent your rules, but like have an idea for what's your integrity in relationship, and like what's the other person, and what does that mean? It's just multiple relationships. So I think that can be challenging for sure.
Yeah, I think you need to define it no matter what, and I think this is where
Yeah.
attachment style comes in is understanding your own needs
Right.
and where you're coming from. So I want to get into the work that you do with the body, because I know that in your bio you talked about, there was a line in your bio here. Wait, I'm going to find it again. Oh, you help clients explore how to feel emotions without running away or finding distractions. And
Mm.
like I read that and I'm thinking, yeah, I need that. Because I struggle with that a lot because I struggle with chronic pain and it can get triggered by emotions. And chronic pain is pretty common for highly sensitive people. So it's very easy, as I'm sure you've noticed, for people to disconnect from the body, but the healing happens in the body. It's not enough to read a textbook or listen to a podcast about attachment style.
Yeah.
I know because I've learned about attachment style years and years ago, and it's not like, oh, now it doesn't bother me anymore. Um, I would love it if you could speak to staying in the body.
Right. Right. So for highly sensitive people, emotions are going to feel, and I would say more intense than
Yes.
the average person, right? So it's not just you're feeling sad, you're feeling like so sad. And it's not just you're feeling anxious, you're not just feeling pain, you're feeling, it's just everything feels amplified, right? And staying in the body, I think, involves, well, first, from a therapy perspective, you want to have someone who can co regulate with you, like stay with you, realize when, and then this is why somatic therapies of different kinds are super helpful, is the person can realize when you're getting overstimulated and get you back towards kind of a window of tolerance, right?
Hmm.
So, what we're looking for is having you grow experiences where you feel comfortable in the body and secure within yourself and able to tolerate those emotions. And the more you can do that, and sometimes I'll just stop my clients and be like, okay, where do you feel that? Okay, let's sit and feel that for a moment. And they don't, I mean, it's probably annoying to them because they want to talk, but it's, at the same time, I'm doing this for a purpose. I'm asking them to slow down and just feel into their body and realize that on an unconscious level that it's not going to, overwhelm. Because
Hmm.
when you're a child or when you don't have the coping skills, those emotions can feel really overwhelming. And it makes sense that people really try to avoid them, right? And I could speak to that. I think I have this thing of it really resonated. I love being in my body, but then I would feel emotion so intensely. And I was also pretty intellectual, so it was easier to just go up here and try. And this is where you get like the ruminating or the trying to figure it out instead of just, okay, I'm just going to let myself feel sad or feel angry or feel the thing. And by that, I mean not, and this is a really good distinction to make, not making up a story about why the emotion exists, not saying, oh, it's because blah, 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 blah. Then your brain's already working. Can you stop and just be like, okay, I'm going to feel the sensations and maybe name them? And I think doing this with a calm presence and a therapist that can help you is going to be really valuable. And that's why that talk therapy, sometimes people get really stuck because it's like, I'm going to tell you about this thing again and again and again. And when I was using more verbal therapy, I would feel like, okay, I'm not getting these people to a place where this is getting resolved. And Diane's work, Diane Poole-Heller, she does, so I'm certified as a DARE practitioner, which is dynamic attachment repatterning. And a lot of her work is helping people to feel secure in their body, right? And what you described as an HSP, right, is, I'm using the shorthand, but highly sensitive person, is not feeling secure in your body or with chronic pain. And it's like, if we think about from an evolutionary perspective, if we're looking outside or we're looking in, we usually scan for threat. And we amplify that, like we focus on that. If, you know, I don't know how many of our parts are working well in our body, we will focus on the fact that our elbow or hip or whatever is not working, right? And then that becomes the focus, right? So if we can scan for the things that are going well and find that sense of calm and security in our body, it's going to be really valuable.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd like to hear more about finding that. You talked about attachment style. How does somebody repattern insecure attachment in the body?
Yeah. So Diane's work, do you know Peter Levine as well?
Yes. I
Okay.
know
So
Peter
Peter
Levine.
Levine and Diane worked together for like 20 years. And Diane's also really well versed in somatic experiencing, which is Peter Levine's. So a lot of it is tracking in the body what people are doing, and there's very specific language that Diane has come up with to work with each of these attachment styles, right? So the therapist is going to have language that makes an avoidant feel like more comfortable, or I don't want to say an avoidant, a person with an avoidant attachment style, because that's making them, and that's all that they. Person with an ambivalent attachment style feel more comfortable. Person with also like that disorganized attachment style. And then Diane's repatterning is also very relational. So if you were to come to me, I would say, like, what is it like to be in the room with me? Like drawing to the relationship. Well, what's it like to hear me say this? What's it like? So always bringing back whatever the client's bringing to their relationship so that the relationship is the key thing rather than, some styles of therapy are more passive about the therapeutic relationship and just assume that having that relationship over time, you will become securely attached. And Diane's is more thoughtful about drawing attention and awareness to the dynamics of the relationship and what you feel within this. Because it's good for a client who's like, nobody's ever here for me, to feel in their body, like, what's it like to have me say this? What's it like for me to show up for you? Because that's encoding something different into their nervous system.
And then do you encourage like a self-reflection with that in terms of their other relationships? So let's say they were on a date. If someone's on a date, what kind of reflection could they do along those lines?
Yeah. So I was, this is what I do with my clients too. It's like, well, how did your body feel? And I had one client, I think one time somebody had said, oh, I couldn't like pay attention to myself the whole time during a date. And I'm like, I don't think we should expect you to, but I just don't want you to forget yourself. If you are more anxiously attached and you're, or like ambivalent attachment style, you're going to focus so much on the other person. You're not even going to notice if you're having a good time on the date. So I will have clients check in, and if they're not sure about something, like, go to the restroom, see how you feel. Like, because sometimes when a person is in proximity, it's hard to be like, no, I really don't like this person, or I'm not sure. So you can take a break, go to the restroom, be like, how is this going? What am I noticing in my body? So that self-check-in while you're on the date is really helpful.
That's great advice. You're saying this, and I'm realizing that's something I have done intuitively on dates in the past. That, I mean, oftentimes I do just have to go to the restroom anyway, but I've noticed that when I take that break and I go to the restroom, I will I will pause and think, okay, how is this date going? What am I feeling? Do I like this guy? Do I not like this guy? Do I feel comfortable? Do I feel like, like what is going on? And I think that's really good advice to intentionally take a break.
Yeah.
Even if you don't have to pee, just whatever.
go.
I got to go to the restroom, just sit in the stall for a couple of minutes and reflect.
Yeah. And even taking it beyond the, like you said, do I feel comfortable? Like, what physical sensations am I feeling? So, because you could say I feel comfortable, but there might be something small and nagging. So, like trying to get a really good picture of everything that's happening, not everything, but on an emotional level, not just saying I feel okay. It's like, no, what physical sensations are there too? Because those are keys. And it might just be like I'm really hungry and I want to eat those ravioli. That's fine, but trying into these things. So,
Yeah.
mhm.
One thing I like to try to tune into as well is how turned on am I? That's pretty important when it comes to dating.
I think that's a good. I think it's a good thing to be like, okay, well, what's your metric for turned on? Like, can I
Right.
imagine myself kissing this person? If the answer is no, that's probably not a good. And also, if it's like a slow burn, that's okay because remember that the intensity that can happen when we're on a date, like you're getting all this attention and it'll, like that can be good. But remember how close kind of anxiety and excitement are to each other,
Yeah.
right? So even if it's not like the most fiery thing, could this build? Like I'm all for people finding out that something can build and feeling safe. I know Esther Perel's work. I'm sure you've read a lot of her stuff or listened to her podcast. She's really wonderful. But she talks about how, you simultaneously can crave safety and also want novelty. Like novelty is what keeps like sex is like very fresh. But at the same time, like safety is maybe makes us feel safe enough to explore our sexuality, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's that dance.
It is. And you don't want to sacrifice one for the other necessarily. And each person might have like a higher drive for one or the other. So you might know for yourself, like, oh, I crave novelty more than I crave safety. And someone who's never experienced safety, I think, would maybe like crave safety more. So things like that. Each person's going to be a bit different on what they're able to tolerate in terms of novelty, safety, what turns them on. Like I think for some people they have to feel safe to get to that romantic or sexual place. For some people they have to be sexual before they can bond. Like I'm not going to stereotype and say males are a certain way or females are a certain way. I think people can be across the spectrum. So knowing what helps you connect to another person.
Yeah, I think this is very wise. And I love that reflection and what you said about maybe it's a slow burn. That metric of am I turned on or not? It's part of the check. It doesn't mean anything. If I'm not feeling turned on, I don't necessarily go, oh, well, I guess he's the wrong guy. But it's part of the body check, I think.
Yeah.
Am I turned on and do I feel safe?
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes you can be turned on and be feeling really anxious, and that could be an interesting combination. And then sometimes you could be feeling really safe, but not at all turned on. And that's a different kind of combination, but maybe that's more of a slow burn guy. You don't know.
Yeah. Well, I think the first one's a little dangerous and gets us into situations where we're like, why am I with this person? And I never feel safe. Or
Yeah.
like, but, and the sex is off the charts, but you can't bring up how you feel sad or how your day at work was. Like that could be like a sign that there's more anxiety than there is like excitement, right? So
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
things like that. Like you should be able to bring up to a partner how you're feeling about things and about things you care about. And it should be okay to talk about, even I'm gonna put this in quotes, but like dumb things like, okay, well, when you like ignore me or that gesture really hurt my feelings, and instead of just being like, oh, it's just a gesture, feeling blown off or things like that, you should be able to have some level of comfort and safety in that your partner will listen to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I know you do dance therapy. Tell us a little bit about what that is and how you use that to help people heal trauma at this body level.
Yeah, so dance therapy is so the American Dance Therapy Association used to define it as a psychotherapeutic use of movement. So that means looking at movement from the perspective of what's going on psychologically. So your movement patterns speak to how you cope with the world, and at least dance therapists believe this, how you cope with the world. And if you change how you move, you change how you feel. Obviously, you change how you feel about things, you change your life, right? So
Mm-hmm.
changing these movement patterns, like a dance therapist has training in analyzing movement. It's basically 2-year grad program to analyze movement and provide movement interventions and also find the meaning in movement. An interesting piece is just like therapists can have like countertransference, we can have movement countertransference.
Hmm.
So say you come in and you only want to do slow movements, and I am like, oh, I hate movements, right? As a therapist, I have to like know myself and my movement patterns enough to know that, oh, this is like something that I have trouble tolerating, or this is something if I'm going to try and meet the client where they're at. And often dance therapists do move with the client or mirror their movements. It's good for me to know where my little pieces of movement are that might make it difficult to attune with a client.
Yeah. And then how does that show up with attachment styles?
That's an interesting thing to contemplate. So Diane's work is a lot of like individual and with the therapist. I'm playing around with and kind of the combination of, moving toward, moving away. Like we can use that as a really rich amount of information. How do you feel if I move towards you? How do you feel if I move away from you? What if you move away? What if you move towards? Like, so
Hmm.
you can take even those like little small examples. It's like a microcosm of your attachment style and how you relate.
So somebody, for example, with an avoidant style might feel a certain level of discomfort with somebody moving close to them, and that's something you'd work on with movement.
Absolutely. And then we
That's
kind of,
great.
yeah, we can find ways that they would feel comfortable. Like, okay, is it more comfortable if you tell me when to stop? Like, and you tell me how close I can get to you? Is it more comfortable if you control, like, what if you're the one coming towards or away? Does that change? Okay, there's some discomfort here. Can you tolerate me coming towards you and staying here? And what do you have to do for you to regulate your nervous system when someone else is here? That might be some ideas of how I would.
And I'd love to hear you talk more about how the body really affects your emotional state.
Yes. Oh, I love this question. So, have you ever do you wear glasses at all?
I do. Yeah, I'm not wearing
Okay.
them right now, but I
Okay.
do wear
So,
glasses
have you
sometimes.
ever recognized someone far away and been like, "Oh, that's so and so by their walk"? Like, I'm not wearing my glasses, but I can tell.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. And we do that when we don't have glasses on, right? We're like, "Oh, that's George," because like you can see by their walks. So, one that tells you about their unique way of movement and how they cope in the world. And then second thing is movement is so powerful that like if you try and put on, so dance therapists will mirror someone's movement, right? So say you move a certain way. Say someone's depressed, right? I give this example a lot. It's like imagine like someone punching in your chest, and
Hmm.
then this is pretty common. Not everyone that's depressed is gonna look like this, but you're gonna feel pretty concave. And then you're trying to do movement with this chest that's sunk in, right? What does that feel like? So you can see how if we can lighten this up or find a different way of moving, you're going to feel differently. Because,
Yeah.
yeah, and I've had people here, let's try it together. So just like,
Sure.
yeah, like just kind of like sink your chest in and try and keep this posture. And then even
Uh,
like trying to get a cup of coffee or like reach to pet the dog, like it's just like everything feels hard,
it
right?
does. Yeah.
Yeah.
Feels very closed off.
Yeah, and then so shake that off. So if we change that movement, right? Like dance therapists, one, we can't do it all at once. So we're not going to like pop out of it the way you and I just did.
Hmm.
But if we use different movement patterns, or sometimes we use props too. So something that would elicit lightness, like a balloon would elicit lightness, or anything that is a little bit up and then is going to have a different way of moving in the world is going to change how you're feeling. So
Hmm.
things are bi-directional. It's not just like, oh, your movement shows how you feel, but how you move it goes the other way. The movement, if you change the movement, you change how you're feeling inside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in my experience, it's in many ways a more effective way to change your emotional state than to try to talk or think your way out of it.
Oh, yeah, I think so. I think it's very much a ground up thing rather than
Mm-hmm.
like, I think that's why some modes of talk therapy will work for people and some won't. Like, so if it's like, and that could be dependent on the person, but if you're talking and you're like, I'm gonna, like convince myself not to do this, or I'm going to convince myself not to feel sad. And it's like, this is a mental exercise, whereas the feeling starts in the body. And what if we work with the source and try doing that instead? And
Yeah.
there's also, I think it's Paul Eklund. This guy did a really interesting study where he was studying facial expressions, right? So he's studying the movement in the face, and he was studying different like disgust and all these things. And he
Mm-hmm.
found that the days that he and his researchers were, because they would do it on themselves, they'd be like, okay, I'm going to sneer or I'm going to do this thing.
Yeah.
And he found that the days he was doing like disgust, he would come home just feeling awful. And so he started to do research on like, oh, wait, like, is it possible that we're not just expressing the emotion, but the emotion is also affects us? And if I do this facial expression over and over, it doesn't affect how I feel. And that was a
Yeah.
really interesting study that
Yeah.
yeah. And he did find that, yeah, that does happen.
You're reminding me of a study that I came across
Mhm.
quite a few years ago, and now I'm not remembering the name of the people who did it, but it had to do with using Botox as a treatment for depression, where they like basically
Oh, yeah.
forced people to like not frown with
Oh,
the
that's
use of
wild. But
Botox.
yeah,
And
yeah.
they said it was as effective as antidepressants.
Yeah, that's so interesting.
It's not like a viable treatment. I mean, they were saying it's not like we're going to start giving depressed people Botox, but it was a very interesting piece of research on facial expression and how facial expression, like basically they said it's as effective as taking an antidepressant to have your face be forced not to frown.
Right. Well, you know what would be interesting to study? This is just random off the cuff, but people's like wrinkles,
Mm-hmm.
because they're indicative of facial expression. So, like, whatever wrinkles they have, I wonder how they correlate to the emotions they've expressed over a lifetime or they felt over a lifetime. I'd be very
Yeah.
curious about that, you know?
I bet that has a lot to do with aging gracefully or not.
It could. It could. It could be like, it's so easy to, I catch myself sometimes. I'm like, why am I frowning? And I'm like, this is silly. I don't want this to be my resting face, Like,
Yeah.
so it's I could see where just the patterns over time would be etched
Resting
into your
bitch face.
Yeah.
Do you know resting
Yes.
bitch face?
But I guess your face is like your emotions or your feelings etched over time on you.
They do.
Yeah. So it's kind of wild.
All right, I'm going to ask you now the question of the podcast. What is true
Yes,
love?
please. Oh, that's good. So what is true love? Well, first thing, I think true love is an action. Like, I think it's a continuous choosing to find the best in the person, choosing to put a relationship first, a person first. Like, I think that's true love. I think anytime that you're willing to look for the best in someone and consciously be trying to better yourself in that person in relationship, I think that's true love. And true love, I feel like, doesn't have to be with a romantic partner. It could be with a child. It could be with a dog. It could be with, anything you're trying to care for, and any person you're trying to care for and hold in that space of wanting the best for them and also for yourself and your relationship.
And the act of doing that, the act of expressing that and
yeah.
showing that.
Because I think that act is really important. Because over time, it's not going to be like, we did talk about sex and how that plays in, but if you're looking for a romantic relationship, over time that may or may not fade or change or things like that. So how do you keep showing up? If chemistry goes away, is it like, okay, love's gone now, or if chemistry changes? And I don't think that's true. I think stuff just changes.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think part of it along those lines is that when there is a natural dip in chemistry, which is going to happen over time in any relationship, that there is effort that gets put into a rekindling, whatever that looks like for the couple. It's going to be different for each couple, but that there's, because you talked about, you had referenced Esther Perel about the need for both safety and novelty and newness and excitement. And so a lot of times when there's a dip in chemistry, it's because there's a lack of novelty. Like you're getting along really well, you're not fighting, but then there's like this lull in the relationship when it comes to the intensity of chemistry. And I think those moments are very telling of, do you put effort into creating novelty in whatever way is appropriate for you? That's going to vary from couple to couple, but it could be exploring kink, it could be exploring tantra, it could just be like going on vacation somewhere, it could be taking up a hobby together, it could be watching a new TV show together, like it could be whatever, but just that there is that conscious effort of, look, we've hit that dip in the chemistry and we've gotten into routines. We have safety. We don't have enough novelty. How can we create more novelty together to put life and spice back into the relationship?
Right. Well, and it's being attuned enough to your partner in your relationship to notice when things are, okay, so this aspect of our relationship is slowing down. Where do we pour more energy into? Where do we, is it on a sexual front, or is it just doing a new activity together can, it's like new neurons firing, right? New things happening in your brain. And I know that even people that exercise together, the endorphins are going at the same time. That can be something. It's being aware enough that there's a lull and not accepting that, okay, this is going to be this way. I guess this is just how it is. And then giving up, like you said, you have to pour back into the relationship.
Yeah. Okay, so any last words of wisdom, especially when it comes to the body and attachment and healing?
Yeah, so let's see. I think it never hurts to do a self check-in. Like anyone. Like, how am I feeling? What do I need? Scanning your body, like taking 2 minutes a day to do that, I think is really helpful. If you're curious about Diane's work, she's wonderful. I think traumasolutions.com is her website, and she has a lot of stuff on attachment pattern. And a lot of us DARE certified providers are really helpful if you're looking to change how you experience romantic love and how you experience attachment. And then dance therapy, the American Dance Therapy Association, is really wonderful if you're curious about that. And then, as always, my website is there. It's lisamanca.com. If you have any questions, I'm happy to talk about any of that, or any of the things we talked about, or anything else you're curious about.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm going to put all those resources in the show notes as well. So if you are curious about Lisa, or you want to find a specialist that does this kind of work, whether it's Lisa or somebody else, if you want somebody local, and I know you're in the Bay Area.
Yeah, but there's people all over. So if this podcast reaches someone that is like, hey, I'm in Colorado, I know people in Colorado, I'm happy to provide resources, So
that's great. I really appreciate that, because at the end of the day, I just want you to get the resources. And I know that I've done a lot of somatic work and intuitive stretching and different types of things that are very similar to what Lisa does. And my experience, you really cannot heal it at the root level if you don't get into the body.
Yeah, you can't heal what you don't feel, kind of thing.
Yes, you can't heal what is it? You can't heal what you don't feel?
Yeah.
I feel like I've heard that phrase, but now I'm going to keep that really in my head. Can't heal what you can't feel. Yeah. So Lisa, thank you so much. Are there any very last words of wisdom or anything else that you'd like to share before we wrap up?
No, thank you so much for having me today, Elizabeth.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm so glad we had this conversation. I think this is a very valuable resource for anyone. It's especially valuable for highly sensitive people who just feel so much. I know, because I do too. And I know how easy it is to try to run away from those feelings, and don't run away from it. The healing is in the feeling, as we said. I kind of twisted the phrase around a little bit there, but you know what I mean. So thank you very much, Lisa. I really appreciate it.